Hello everyone, I'm Sunny Singh from the University of Wales, Trinity St David's. I'm one of the principal investigators for the Camau Dyfodol project, and this is a collaboration with the University of Glasgow. I want to take this time to discuss something that we've been discussing with practitioners and education partners all across Wales. This aspect has been very useful in shaping how we approach learning progression and how we look at information when thinking about curriculum realisation. Hopefully this will also give you a chance to think about your practice and reflect on how you can use some of the discussion elements that follow in your schools and organisations. For this session, we are going to look at two useful ways of thinking, or more precisely, moving from one way of thinking to another. Learning is complex, and it's not surprising that any approach will have to deal with this complexity. It is easy to want a quick solution and simple universal approaches, but these often don't work and they do not appreciate the nuances of each learner and each school, each classroom, each teacher, and the relationships that teachers have with different learners within the same schools. So all of this interrelation leads to complexity that has to be dealt with. We want to introduce some concepts that you will hopefully find useful, and you will start thinking critically about your practice and bringing together different evidence and engaging with research to inform your curriculum realisation. We are going to look specifically at this session is moving from dichotomous thinking, which is human nature, and when we look at something complex, and trying to look at competing ideas in our heads. So moving beyond dichotomous thinking and how to hold competing ideas in your head. Dichotomous thinking is a tendency for people, and as I said before, it's human nature, to categorize things into one or two opposing binary positions, and therefore getting a false or a skewed understanding of the whole picture. And quite often this leads to a false dichotomy, and we've seen this quite often, not only in education but in society wider as well. For example, someone saying something is either effective or ineffective, when in fact a mixture of effective and less effective parts is probably more an accurate depiction of what's going on. And this binary approach really does polarize people's thinking, and we're going to come on to this. So why do people do this? Why do people hold on to dichotomous ideas? It's to help dealing with complexity, and this is particularly true in education, because as mentioned earlier, the complex nature of learning and complex nature of our education school systems. Dichotomous thinking reduces your mental load and is recognized by psychology to be a form of cognitive distortion, again linking to a false dichotomy or an inaccurate view of the actual picture, what's happening in front of us. And it leads to an absolutist position, and that makes people less sensitive or aware to more sophisticated nature and dealing with nuances and dealing when considering complex issues such as learning. So related to dichotomous thinking is moving forward from that particular way to holding competing ideas in your head. So related to the ideas of getting comfortable with holding competing or quite often contradictory ideas in your head when you talk about learning and teaching. Competing ideas can often cause people to have anxieties because they tend to think about there is a best way, and that's human nature, that's the best way of approaching something, rather than viewing as competing ideas as difficult, viewing them as valued opportunities for deeper reflection and to build upon your own understanding. And this is, as I said, polar opposite to dichotomous ideas, realizing that there is no one true way of doing this. And this is especially true for complex situations and things that require far deeper understandings. And again, we've said why this is so important in education and why this has become so important with the work we're doing at the moment with our practitioners, is moving away from dichotomous thinking to these competing ideas. But in education in particular, and this is quite relevant in different discussions that are happening not only within the practitioner groups, but not only within your schools, but wider, not only in Wales but internationally as well. And we have purposely picked some polarizing arguments here to get discussions and get things moving forward as well. And these discussions are happening quite a lot across the education system, especially with social media, etc. So the examples we have here are knowledge versus skills. Is it one or the other? And this debate happens quite often within the education landscape. And this is an example of when you take something complicated and trying to put it into one A or B. Practical versus theoretical. Which one is better? Is it a completely theoretical approach needed, or do we work by project-based or practical approaches to this? Freedom versus discipline. Is it a disciplinary route going all the way down, or is it more big ideas, flexibility and freedom elements of this? And then also employability versus liberal education. As I said, we've purposely picked these examples because this is quite prominent in different areas in the education system. But this will sort of highlight of how do we move from pigeonholing A or B, but into actually holding more competing ideas in our head, and when have we seen these sort of things happen within our own practice, within our own schools and organizations.